That's like one basketball is real. So, yeah, for sure. That's just exhibition. I've seen my boys in basketball games. No. Yeah. Okay.
All right, folks, again, my apologies. We're running a little bit behind because our closed session ran long. We are already in open session for the regular school district meeting for Monday, December 10th, 20th. Do not wish time away, do not wish time away. So if we could all stand for a moment of silence and the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now is the time of the board meeting where we recognize visitors. Allison, do we have any tonight? No. No? Okay. So we will begin with presentations to the board. Do we have a student council representative here tonight? Okay. Well, then we'll move on to the next one, and that is a presentation on the instructional coaching by Ms. Springer.
So we're going to present a little information about district's move towards instructional coaching and some of the information we gathered when we went to our conference in October. So I have Ms. Graves, Mr. Hawkins, and this is Ms. Ritchie to my right. Okay, they're all going to share some of the information that we have and the outlook for Galesburg.
Okay. All the people on this screen we can probably recognize as being successful people. One thing they have in common is all of these individuals had a coach to help them get them where they are today.
Everyone needs a coach. It doesn't matter whether you're a basketball player, a tennis player, a gymnast, or a bridge player. My bridge coach, Sharon Osberg, says there are more pictures of the back of her head than anyone else's in the world. Sorry, Sharon. There you go. We all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve. You receive so many different kinds of advice, I don't know where to start. One that comes to mind is to have a coach. Our board member in 2002, John Doerr, said, "You need a coach." And I said, "Well, I don't need a coach. I'm an established CEO. Why would I need a coach? Is something wrong?" He said, "No, you need a coach. Everybody needs a coach." So Bill Campbell became my coach and has served Google very well. Every famous athlete, every famous performer has somebody to coach. Somebody who can watch what they're doing and say, "Is that what you really meant? Did you really do that?" They can give them perspective. The one thing people are never good at is seeing themselves as others see them. A coach really helps.
Like Mrs. Springer said, we had the privilege of attending a coaching conference in the fall. It was presented by Jim Knight's instructional group from the University of Kansas Research Center for Education. We wanted to make sure that we went to the conference and that we became aware of the best practices and the newest philosophies in instructional coaching, so that when we came to 205, we made sure that we rolled it out right the first time and we made the biggest impact possible on our students. This quote pretty much summed up our goal for instructional coaching, that every student will receive excellent instruction every day in every class and by design, not by accident. One of the big components they talked about at the conference was picking the right people for the job, the people that would be able to communicate well with teachers, who would be able to influence teachers and decisions, and that people could trust to help move them forward. So some of the traits that they suggested for successful coaches we use to help guide our interview process. We needed people who would use the partnership to work with adults, understand the impact of the cycle and deep coaching, have an instructional playbook, understand how to gather data and also how to use it effectively, has effective communication strategies, are effective leaders. Sometimes leaders don't always use that power for good, so we want to make sure that the leaders are using it for the most benefit to students, and that we make sure that these people that we choose to be in these roles are supported by our system, that we have everything in place prior to bringing them on board so that they can be successful.
Some of the questions and feedback that we've all heard throughout our time since this started being rolled out was, what will this look like in our district? So we want to give you kind of a framework for what this will look like. So instructional coaching is a partnership, really, above all else. It's a partner between the instructional coach, who are our instructional leaders naturally, and our teachers. And so they analyze the current reality, and usually this begins by looking at data. And that data could come from the classroom, it could come from grade level, it could be from an entire school. So it usually starts with the data, and they work together when they look at that data and look at any trends and look for any areas of improvement. All of the goals are student focused. That's what we're all here for, are our students. And so this really exciting endeavor, and every aspect is focused on what can drive instruction for our students. Once the goals are identified, then, which I mentioned after you look at the data, at that point, the teaching strategies can go into place, and the support that the instructional coach can offer to the teacher through that collaborative relationship. And then finally, and what I think this is one of the most interesting aspects, one of the things I love the most about the model that we're using is the support is provided all the way through. So this cycle might take 6 weeks, it might take 8 weeks, there's no set end game. It really depends on the individual goals and the time that it takes to get there, which is really, I think, a benefit. So how will we do this? So it's really important that we know what the coach is there to do, what that role is, so that we're all clear. One of the most important things, as I mentioned with that collaborative relationship, is being able to have reflective conversations with teachers. Through not only the conversations, but also the modeling that the instructional coach can provide. Sometimes it makes the most sense for them to use video monitoring if that is the preference of the teacher, if that's something that is agreed upon. We could also use the data that we draw from what our students, what their perception is. And then I did want to mention also the deep coaching. That is really, really important, because if it's surface coaching, it's more kind of a basic level where it's just kind of positive and it doesn't really dig into maybe what those areas of need are. So an important part of it is being able to have kind of the difficult conversation if that is necessary. So it's celebrating the positive, but also being able to be frank and genuine about any areas of improvement as well. So once that deep coaching and that relationship is identified, that's when the instructional coach can move into the piece of providing the resources. And our instructional coaches will have a wealth of resources, and we'll discuss that just a little bit later. The walkthroughs are incredibly important for the information gathering piece. This is not evaluative whatsoever, okay? And that also aids in that relationship being collaborative and peer-based. We also recognize, and we learned a lot at the conference we attended, that instructional coaches need the time in order to put more tools in their own toolbox. They need the opportunity to collaborate with one another, and additionally take the time to add to their own personal knowledge base. So some of the things that coaching is not, it's not a catch-all for a variety of other things. And the reason that it's very important that we're focused with this is because in order to move the needle, the important work has got to be done. And so The coaching is not a catch-all for a sub needed in a room. They're not testing coordinators. The mentoring relationship is very different than the instructional coaching relationship as well. So those are just some examples. This is a very important aspect to the framework that we'll be following. These partnership principles, these are also a part of Jim Knight's framework for instructional coaching. Really, as you look at those from left to right, they're all important. Equality means that everyone's opinions matter, even when we disagree. We can tactfully disagree, but everyone is on the same level. So an instructional coach and a teacher are peers, okay? Choice is vitally important. It's not prescriptive, especially in this beginning stages, not prescriptive at all. It's if someone would like to have via support, and there's flexibility on how we get there. So we can talk about these things and come to an agreement and work forward together. Coaches should really do more reflective listening than they do talking. They really should. And the dialogue and reflection piece, as I mentioned, are both very important because that helps with that collaborative relationship that is key to the successful work that we're here to do. And again, finally, that support so that you're continually clarifying, you're continually maintaining focus. Sometimes we're working towards goals and we're expending a lot of energy, but we're not getting movement. And sometimes someone who comes in from the outside identifies some other means of getting where we're headed. Confidentiality is absolutely vital. It's pretty much a cornerstone of the process in regards to it being non-evaluative.
All right, so then they talked about some areas of why we block learning and why it's important to get past this, and instructional coaches help us to do those things. But here's some reasons why we tend to block learning as educators. We have blind spots. We can't see it. What we do every day becomes such a habit that we can't see the areas where we really need to change. So we don't see the need to change. It works well for me, so why do I need to change? That leads right into value. Don't see the value? Why do I need to do it? All right? Identity, that's something they really talked about. As educators, we're proud of who we are and what we've become. We're proud to be teachers. And as a result, if I have to try something new, it might challenge me and it might challenge my identity. So that's a big blocking point there. Hope. Sometimes we lose hope. We lose the belief that we can learn. A lot of times we fall into that, we fall into blame. It's somebody else's fault that our students aren't learning in the classroom. And the final one is fear. Afraid of losing face. It might reveal weakness if I try something new. And so, the line there at the end, if we don't learn, something dies inside of us. And we're always, I know as a principal, always trying to talk to our staff about continually growing every day. It's something we're working with our kids, our students now in the classroom with the growth mindset. We need to keep learning. So how do we unblock learning? We can set goals. When you want to do something, the chances of you achieving that thing are so much greater than if you say, well, I've got to do it. It's a have to. We got to make it a want to. Try design thinking. Experiment with new techniques that are out there. Do a hope audit. All right? Find out where you're losing hope and attack those areas. Mindy talked about the various resources that are available. Locate resources that can help you reach your goal. And finally, flip your perspective. Become the student. We talked about the option of videotaping. Sometimes I found videotaping when I was learning to evaluate, when I was videotaping my own lessons as a teacher, as a very powerful tool because I couldn't believe some of the things I was saying and how I was presenting to students. How can you learn from someone like that? So flip the perspective, become the student, in the classroom. Learn how, what they do, what the students are experiencing. And so teachers as learners by nature, as teachers, we want to help people learn. And we want them to become more. But in order to do this, we have to learn more too.
Okay, so we've told you everything else, but why do we need them here in Galesburg? How is your practice different from this year from last, or 10 years ago? So are you a teacher with 25 years of experience, or have you done your first year 25 times? Right? So are we building on those things and learning every day? So we focus on best practices. In my initial presentation to the board, I talked about the effect size being 1.25, which is a substantial effect size on student learning, major impact. So the biggest bang for the buck, why would we not have teachers building the collective efficacy of other teachers? So within the ranks, we are working together to strengthen our curriculum and our instruction and then improve student results. Why coaching? We want to provide a fresh, like Tom talked about, 360-degree perspective. It is hard as you're up there teaching to see all the corners of the room or all the conversations or to understand the misconception that someone might have over here to the side of you as you're speaking. With a coach, you can kind of learn how to do those, attack new techniques and strategies to help you overcome those and help improve student understanding. Provide personal learning between the coach and the teacher. Both of you are learning new things, and I think it's a great resource. In some of the interviews we even talked about, I feel like the people that we interviewed really understood that I'm a resource builder for all of these teachers. It's my opportunity to actually go out, find those things that they need, that they might not otherwise have had time to do, and then make things more efficient and effective in that manner. Again, connecting colleagues and offering effective feedback, again, non-evaluative. I just like this quote from Jim Knight. So our next steps. We've already created the job description based on our vision and what we learned at the conference and some other reading. We've interviewed and we proposed 10 instructional coaches to be hired. We continue to look for more resources. We're going to create a coaching playbook so that there's standard documents across the district so all coaches are using the same things. And then we have training here coming up January 7th through 9th and February 19th through 20th. We actually have Jim Knight's instructional coaching group from Kansas coming to Galesburg. We're going to host that at Knox College in the Lincoln Room. We actually have 35 people signed up from around the community to join that training. So it's a great opportunity for us to have some outreach into other school districts as well. And then we're going to roll out the purpose and vision. We would like the idea of having kind of like a video of what is instructional coaching, what does that look like, and what does that mean for Galesburg District 205. So if there's any misconception out there, we've kind of alleviated that. And then accept volunteer teachers for this first round of coaching. We'd really like to see. I've already had a couple people approach me saying, I'd love to have that. How do I get that? So making that an opportunity. And we liked this quote. All right, that is all we have.
Thank you very much. Do members of the board have any questions?
I have two short questions. Who and how are you going to evaluate these folks? Because their job description is a lot different than teachers. And who's going to be their person? Because they're going to work across multiple buildings. So you evaluate them all?
I would evaluate them, and there's a Danielson framework for instructional coaches, so that we could mirror that.
It was really important to us that it wasn't a principal evaluating them, so there was no pressure there, because the information they glean in the classrooms when they're coaching is confidential. It's not to be shared with the principals, and so we didn't want there to be any conflict of interest that way.
And where are we housing these people then?
They will have offices here. We'll
In
have
this
a couple,
building?
We'll have a couple classrooms or a classroom where they can have just a place to kind of leave their space. I mean, they're going to be all over.
Well, our big goal was to make sure that they weren't appearing to belong to one building. So we want to try to find space here so that they are truly seen as district coaches, so they can go really wherever.
As a board, how will we measure the success of this program? Do we have goals to look forward to, or?
We will have goals, and you can chime in as you want, but my personal feeling is that they're going to be setting goals and working with teachers, and achievement of those goals and what the student data reflects as a result of those changes in practices and things like that are what we can look at as well.
And that information can be shared blindly or with redacted
Absolutely,
individuals
absolutely.
to show impact.
Mhm.
It's also important to note that, in order to make this work really well, this has to be a district-wide culture of coaching. I know that Dr. A has already talked about providing opportunities for each one of us to have a coach. I don't know if you wanted to speak on that.
Yes, so I had asked Ms. Ham to find some space in the title grants for next year, then I think it's important that all the administrators have coaches as well, because if we think this is important, then we should be getting coaches too. So, you know, this is something that we're looking for, some people from outside, and I'm soliciting some from proposals from some outside folks to give us some coaching experience as well. So I do believe that this is important for everybody to take part in. So, you know, we're not special here, so we need to make sure that we have coaches as well.
And Ron, I think one of the other points that we talked about, and maybe didn't elaborate a lot on, when they make a goal to improve student achievement, they work until that goal is met. They don't change the goal, they just find new avenues to get to the goal. So if the first try, you know, if the first effort didn't work,
Right.
they'll try something else, but they're going to achieve those results and realize that.
Any other questions from board members? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now we will have a presentation regarding the Great Galesburg Shake. Dr. Aston.
Thank you. We have the committee is sitting out here in the audience, and I believe they're ready to go. They have the presentation, and they will be presenting. Do you have it loaded up there? Do you want to stand up here and move? Okay.
Okay, so I'm Jody McNally. I teach special ed at Nielsen Elementary School. And I also have some of my fellow committee members with me. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves now or?
Sure, hi, I'm Barb Baker. I'm a 7th grade language arts teacher at Lombard Middle School.
And I'm Cindy Barschinger. I'm a pre-K teacher here in this building.
So I'm just going to start off by, for those of you who might not know about the Great Galesburg Shake, it's an opportunity in our district for students in grades 4 through 12 to use manners and conversational skills and soft skills, as we like to call them, in professional environments. So it's offered to all elementary schools for grades 4 and 5, and then the middle schools and the GHS and North have preliminary rounds each, like early spring. Each elementary school sends their top 12. Each middle school sends their top 15, and then GHS and North share 30 places in that round 1 at the high school. We send out guidelines and expectations for the preliminary rounds to principals ahead of time so that, in an effort that we can be consistent as far as how the rounds are held at each school and what the expectations are so that all kids are hopefully being prepared in the same way.
So we start with some preliminary rounds at each of the buildings, and then we go into round 1, which is basically a work the room. A lot of folks come to volunteer, and it's sort of a handshake, eye contact, great conversation scoring. The gauntlet has a variety of different sort of experiences for the competitors. They see things like how to handle a disgruntled customer, to other situations like, maybe you have to pep up your school for the big park test, something like that. Rounds 3, 4, they become a little bit tougher. The kind of poise under pressure comes on and they have to do some different tasks. And then 5 and 6, it's narrowed down, and there's quite a bit of pressure. We tend to go outside of the city and take them out and put them under pressure and use those soft skills and professionalism in those areas.
Okay, so what are the benefits to students? They're going to tell you in just a second, but some of you may have caught on that I teach preschool, and preschool is not necessarily a part of this competition, so why would I spend all these hours doing that? One of the things I notice as a pre-K educator is that we get a lot of children who come in and language is a concern. And that connecting and just that ability to take turns in a conversation, to look at each other when we're speaking. And so it has been a great opportunity for me, actually, to see all the work we do at the foundational level, to see actually the students. So I especially think that very first round, and last year we upped it, that was tough. If you were there, if any of you were there, I got to stand back and reflect and watch those students. And I have to say, I was one who's been to, those great middle schoolers down in Georgia, and I was pretty impressed with our students. Just watching them, and these were people that a lot of them would never meet, probably their entire life, had they not done that. So I think that is a huge benefit for building their confidence. The way they held themselves was amazing. Even the younger ones, it was quite amazing to me to watch that. And then also for the people in the community, just to see our students and see what they're doing and what they're capable of. But here's the big thing that I think is a benefit, and this is, I see that's challenging for many, is learning how to win with grace and also how to lose with grace, both sides of that coin. So, but actually, would you play that video, because
Sure.
they really say it better.
This is just a short video that was created during round 3 out at Carl Sandburg last year. They got the chance to work with some green screen technology, so we just thought this was a pretty good little snippet of the student perspective. If I can get it to start at the right time.
Kids hear about it, I think they just think that we're shaking people's hand just to meet them, but really there's a lot more to it. You get to learn lots of things, you get put in different life situations, I think the community has really done a good job of embracing the Shake as a program in general, and they really helped us to kind of get exposure and to let kids know how really great these skills are and the importance of them, because it really takes you far. You can meet someone and have a good conversation with them, give them a good handshake, and make a good representation of yourself in the district. I'm Natalie Nelson, and I'm a freshman.
Okay. I would like to introduce Jakara Kelly. She was our Great Galesburg Shake winner from this past April. Yes, so Jakara, if you want to go up.
Last year, if you would have asked me around this time, I wouldn't have really understood what this program was. But actually, one of my best friends was actually in that video, and she's the one who kind of like mentioned it to me, like doing it, because I was always one of those kids in middle school, and like this had never been offered, so I was one of the kids who like I would never try it out for I would have never ran for student council, I never wanted to do a spelling bee, like I never wanted to do it. I just didn't want to stand in front of people, I didn't want to talk. Like, it was just, and even like for my personality, everyone thought that was so weird. But my very good friend was like, I don't want to do it alone. Can you please come with me? So I did it. And I honestly think that was one of the best experiences of my life. Like, up to date and probably forever. It's taught me so much about myself, and that, like, you can do so much more than you think you can. And like that, especially like I realized like, I'm coming up to the point where I'm gonna have to start applying to college and like do those sorts of things. And I even went on like a college campus tour this summer, and I realized how like I just felt more at place. I felt like I could ask questions. I felt like I really was making connections with people I needed to make connections with, and I felt like this really did help me. Like my friend Emma said, like even a handshake and like keeping eye contact with someone and starting a conversation, initiating that first like, hi, nice to meet you. Like that really just like blows, especially adults, away to see kids doing that, especially from such a young age. Like one of our other contestants who made the final 5 in 6th grade, which is crazy. And even my little brother tried out, and his best friend made it to round 2, and they were only 4th graders. And it's crazy to think like little kids as little as 4th grade can compete against seniors. We didn't have any seniors in the top 5, but there were seniors who tried out. So obviously it shows that like kids from such a younger age can compete against a 12th grader. It just depends on the maturity level of that person and even like how you can use your personality to express yourself and introduce yourself to other people.
Thank you.
Okay, so what are the benefits to the community? I think I addressed that somewhat, because community members are seeing students that they never, probably would. But y'all might remember the Register Mail article that really spoke to the fact about how our younger adults lack those skills. Communication. I can't tell you how many times I've been at the checkout and I know the complete drama of the entire store as well as the high school. And I'm being checked out. So I think it really does give that opportunity, and I think you said it beautifully, for students, very young students, to realize how important that is and to connect. And to see that our students, you hear so much in the news and so forth about the things that aren't good. But if you walk through the building, there is a lot of great things happening with our students. And I'm just going to read you this quote because I really can't say it any better than this. Mike Loomis, former city alderman, and he was very active with the veterans, has since passed away, but he was involved in the Shake 2 years ago when we did the lunch with the veterans. And I'm just going to read it because every time I do, I just think this is why it's so important. It is easy in today's society, and in particular here in Galesburg, to read about bad incidents in the paper or hear about them on the radio. You are inclined to get down on our youth in Galesburg. After participating in the 2016 Great Galesburg Shake as a judge, I will refute that and say our future is in good hands in Galesburg. So with that, I would like to introduce Jessica Donaldson, who was a judge, so that you can get a perspective from her.
So I was told that I have 1 minute, so I'm sticking to what I've written so that I don't just kind of go on and take up a lot of your time. So I'm Jessica Donaldson. I am the Director of Crisis and Staff Services at Bridgeway, and I also see our school-based mental health initiative. Last year I was asked to be a judge for the Great Galesburg Shake, and I agreed for a couple of reasons. First, I truly understand the importance of representation, and for several of the youth in our community, this may be one of the few opportunities that they have to interact with someone who looks like them, who's fulfilling a career that they are interested in. We all know that when you can envision something, it becomes that much more obtainable. I also chose to participate in the Great Galesburg Shake because it offers youth an experience that they may not otherwise have. They're given the chance to learn tangible skills that will carry them far in life. Eye contact, a firm handshake, how to network in a crowded room, how to enter and exit an ongoing conversation, appropriate attire, or even how to keep your head up and move on when the outcome didn't go as planned. These are life skills, skills that I've learned over the course of interviewing many job candidates, are not always a standard that is taught in school, but is a necessity in order to learn how to succeed in life. So while the Great Galesburg Shake's focus is on offering opportunities for students, what I think it offers to the community is a sense of hope and pride. Hope that by taking the time to teach our youth skills today, we can be proud of how they represent our community tomorrow.
So as a member of this committee since beginning of time, that I can imagine when we first created it, I'm often asked, how can I get involved? I think that when we start with even round one, and there's so many people at the field house, afterwards I still have people come up to me later, what else can we do? How can we support this? How can I get my sister involved or my cousin? Have you thought about using this group? And I think that speaks a lot for how we've evolved over the years that we've started it. One of the interesting things is, as we've gone out of town, if we're wearing our Great Galesburg shirts, we've had people just stop us on the street. And what a great way for our students to network with some people from all over the world and have an opportunity to brag about our district and what we're doing. And so that is the way that we go beyond our community when there's an interest. So what are you ladies doing today? What's going on? How is this a part of your community? What are you doing? And so then we share that with them and have had positive results as well.
My experience with the Shake was amazing. We got the opportunity last year in the Final Five to go to Washington, D.C. for about 3 days, and we got to meet senators and congresswomen from all around the state of Illinois, and did one-on-one interviews with them and really gained those professional skills that you need to succeed later in life. Currently at Illinois State, I last semester pledged a professional business maturity called Delta Sigma Phi, and our recruitment process is very similar to what the first round of the Shake is like, where it's you go into a room and it's all the active members and you shake their hands and you get great professional skills. And what I learned from the Shake, I feel honestly really helped me with that whole process and succeeding, and then in turn becoming an active member. My experience with the Shake.
Sorry. Okay, I'd like to introduce Mr. and Mrs. Owens. They're the parents of Olivia Owens, who was one of our former Shake contestants. So if you guys want to come on up, thank you.
Teacher Carter gets up here without any notes. With their notes.
So we've got 2 minutes instead of 1 minute.
Olivia's 12, and she's in 7th grade at Churchill Junior High. She has participated in the Shake since she was in 4th grade. And actually both her and her son Tanner participated that year and both made it to the top 8. I think actually that's when they really became buddies, because there wasn't any fighting. They were having to work on these things together. Both of them have very different personalities. They also learned different things about themselves during this event. Olivia was fortunate enough last year to make it to the top 5, and she got to go to New York City, which was absolutely wonderful. Several people came up to me and asked if I was okay sending her on that trip without one of us. And at first I just laughed, thinking to myself, my goodness, do you not know Olivia? She'll be giving the directions to all of them. But Doug and I were completely 100% okay with sending her. And the people involved are just wonderful, respected educators chaperoning these girls, and we entrusted them dearly. So we had no problems. Olivia has a very strong personality. She is very confident in herself, but this program has sharpened her skills. I asked her what she did in one of the rounds, and she said, well, I had to go into a room of business professionals and work the room. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm 48 and I can't even work a room. So I was very impressed that she could do that. So we're huge supporters of it.
You know, ironically, Jacob Williams just called me yesterday and is wanting me to help him find an advertising internship. So talking about working the room, he's still working it. Being a parent's tough, and I don't think that we're probably alone in that. But the Great Galesburg Shake has helped us out as parents without our kids really knowing it. Since they were little, you tried to tell them that they need to look people in the eyes, they need to shake hands confidently, they need to walk with purpose, they need to prepare and practice, etc. All this stuff you tell your kids. But these life skills sometimes get muddled because we're the parents delivering the message. But the Great Galesburg Shake delivers the same message, and they listen. The benefits of the Shake. Well, to us, it's symbolic of life, because sometimes things go your way and you end up going to New York City, and sometimes they don't, and you end up not making it past the first round and you're crying in the back seat of the Jeep on your way home. But we've had it both ways at our house, and there are lessons for each outcome. And I think what I like most about this is that your personality in this will only take you so far. And whether you're talking about the Great Galesburg Shake or your professional life, eventually you're going to be required to have a little substance and work ethic behind that polished personality. And the stuff that these kids have to memorize for the Shake, and the pressure to deliver it to the community leaders, the students who keep advancing or even try are all very deserving, because that's the way it's set up. You can't fake it, and just like life, you can't fake that either. I asked Tanner, who's now at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee, and by the way, always needs money whenever I talk to him, so he didn't learn that from the shade. But I asked him what he learned most about this, and he said, just today in the text, as he also needed to borrow $50, he realized how much the leaders of the community care about the youth in their community, and it's important to be polite because people notice. And that right there is why this is important. Because I bet every student who participates in this has learned something that they can apply to everyday life. Whether it's work hard for something you want to be, or you want to be polite, or you're not going to die if you have to talk in front of a bunch of people you don't know. Think about how valuable, when applied, these lessons and values are to our community and to our world. Thank you. And if you're wondering why I look like Mr. Spray, we have the same mother.
So, as I close here with our last slide, one of the reasons we were able to go to New York is when we make a connection with former Galesburg folks. And so John Simpkins is a former Galesburg student. And so he works at American Express, and we were able to contact him so that he could set up round 5. And a former Lombard secretary moved to New York, back to her home, and she is friends with an executive from Nickelodeon. And so we were able to go to Nickelodeon for round 6, and they took time out of their day to help support us with our final round, and therefore picking our winner. And so here's a couple of really good quotes that kind of resonate with how he felt as being the host in those kinds of situations. And so I'm just going to read it to you really quick. Last year I had the privilege to host the semi-final round in New York City at American Express's global headquarters. As a GHS alumni, I was very impressed and proud of how these students carried themselves, especially at their age, and with people they've never met. Hosting the Great Galesburg Shake was a wonderful experience for myself and my Amex colleagues. I would recommend other out-of-towners who are passionate about the prosperity of Galesburg to volunteer in future years. And so we were really fortunate to have that opportunity for round 5 as well and make our connections. So we've been able to do that with our connections for our rounds 5 and 6 when we've been out of town. So as we conclude that, the Shake Committee was given some concerns that we would like to address from you, and so I'll just start with number 1. It asked us how and who is defining professionalism, and so we felt there was really no definition. The committee members did not try to define it, but choose to define the skills that we looked for throughout the entire competition. We use different rubrics throughout the competition based on what students are asked to do within those skills and in those situations. The skills that students are scored on are the handshake, eye contact, social grace, engagement, confidence, and sense of humor at times. Another concern that was brought up are educators having these intentional conversations about what professionalism is and is not prior to the event sort of situation. And so what we kind of think is that each school building determines when and how those skills would be taught. The committee kind of provides them with guidelines, but we don't really have the authority to mandate that. Some principals have supported the skills being taught into sort of regular interactions. And there's been a variety of conversations that happen before, during, and after our event. Are there professionals involved in diverse demographics and backgrounds? We have focused each year on having professionals be as diverse as possible. From our first year till now, we feel we've made progress. We try to reach out to community members, but we rely mostly on volunteers. We've had volunteers from a number of different areas. We've had firefighters, veterans, people from Dickey Homes. We've had Regional Office of Education, NAACP, Knox County Housing Authority, and many others that have come and volunteered their time. As program directors, are we aware of the unconscious implicit biases in the evaluations. We don't really have a program director. We just have a lot of volunteers, probably about 12, I would say, who give hundreds of hours after school, weekends to make this happen. We're aware that a bias could exist, but when you're asking community members to volunteer their time to be judges, there's really no opportunity to screen the judge for that bias. Judges are informed on the skills that students should be displaying and how they would be judged, but we really can't control that. Each year after we have our event, we like to reflect. Talk about teaching being a part of that reflection, and we do the same. We get input from community, we get input from our students, and we kind of sit down and say, what are we going to do next year and how can we make it better? And we look about think about what went well and where we could make some changes. Rounds are set up to try to have a variety of people judging students to average scores. This is done to attempt to reduce some of those biases in our cases that we look at. One of the concerns was, what are the learning goals of our program? How are the activities designed to teach and reach these, and how are they assessed? A goal of the Shake is really to expose students to those soft skills and helping them reach their future or current goals. The rounds of the Shake are designed to assess the skills of our students. One of the goals is to connect the students to the Galesburg community. We have great kids in our schools, we have great businesses in our community, and this is a way to connect the two. One of the big goals of our program is an opportunity to practice soft skills in those situations, real life kinds of situations. Our students are going to many different directions when they leave our schools, so we want them to be employable at all costs. We allow students to practice interacting with adults, give students a small feel of that interviewing type skill. When students have only advanced to round one, they have commented on what a positive experience that round one has been for them. We want our students and our community members to be proud to be from Galesburg and to be proud to be a part of Galesburg schools. A way to make that happen is to create a positive experience. Each activity is set up with a mindset of how students can emphasize the positive about something in our community. One year, students had to sell a house to a family about moving to Galesburg. Another year, they had to create an exhibit with ties to the railroad history in Galesburg. So students have presented even on what makes Galesburg great. Another concern was talking about some of the funding coming from our schools. Schools are not really asked to contribute to the Shake. Parent organizations and booster clubs are asked if they wish to donate. PTOs have given to geography clubs, book clubs, after-school tutoring, snacks, park snacks. And so when we ask, they can say no. Those kinds of activities also do not include every student. They're always a select group. And so some PTOs have given because they know that the number of hours that the staff in their building has volunteered to work with their students. It was also mentioned about the high school baseball team in one of the examples from the concern, and we thought that baseball teams have the ability to hold a fundraiser, sell concessions, and purchase their items even through an athletic budget. We work solely through donation. One of the questions was about some inconsistencies of preparing our kids for this program. And so we feel that as a staff, we send out an email to the entire school district. Every time there's a meeting, anyone's welcome to volunteer to join us. The volunteer committee members have no authority to mandate that principals and staff prepare their students in any way. We simply give them guidelines, and we hope that administration would address those. There was another concern going back to kind of the funding in regards to the amount of money that is donated. They would like to see it staying local, and maybe having some kind of like a leadership club or a mentoring group. They mentioned that not a lot of students try out for the Shake. This might be a way to get like more kids involved. And so we just wanted to address that by saying the goal of the committee was always, and has always been, grades 4 through 12. Unfortunately, some schools have embraced it, some have not. We actually did have, I think they called it a leadership club at both King and Nielsen for a while, which again was done completely on a volunteer system. To clarify that our largest donor has been the Galesburg Community Foundation, which has awarded us a grant of $5,000 for the past 3 years. And I'd say our next largest would be the Galesburg Public School Foundation, about $1,000, and Dick Blick has also. And then smaller amounts are donated throughout with like PTO, businesses, $100, $300. Money is used to provide food for rounds, including a kind of formal dinner for round 4. Also for rounds 2, any items we might need for our gauntlet. But the biggest bulk amount is for our travel expense. And those who have contributed have been made aware that we go outside of Galesburg for the rounds 5 and 6. As stated earlier, some schools have embedded the shake throughout the year, as well as have implicitly taught those skills. Therefore, all students are taught the skills and are highly encouraged to be a part of our competition. But some choose not to. Mentoring groups and the leadership club would be great additions. We've had that happen for a few of our schools. Another concern was that traveling outside of Galesburg, that they would like to see maybe that those monies stay local or that we stay in Illinois. And many of our students have not been out of Illinois. The opportunity to travel is part of the magic of the Great Galesburg Shake. We want our kids to dream, and we want our kids to dream big. So this mystery trip is one of those big dreams that we have. Leadership clubs don't create that same magic. Our kids need to see places and people doing great things. They need to see people with Galesburg connections can go many places and be successful. Galesburg can always be home, and you can always stay connected. And another concern was brought up about a perception about son and daughters of faculty members being a part of it. And we reviewed some of our groups. Last year's group, 4 out of the top 25 were children of faculty. As they moved forward, there were 3 from our top 8, and then 2 of the top 5. The year prior, top 5 had 2 out of 5, and in 2016, we had 0 faculty members' children that were in the top 5. If we look at Shake winners, only 1 from the past 4 years has been a child of a faculty member. The students who have been children of faculty say that they attest their success to being in 4-H and a participant of our local theater groups. The Shake committee is not willing to exclude students that are faculty members from being a part of our competition. Faculty members' children compete in a variety of athletics and clubs and activities across our district. So we feel we need to give the same opportunity. Again, with the staying local, that was our kind of the last concern that was brought up to us, stay local or in Illinois. It was offered that we go to Chicago and St. Louis. And so we said local businesses donate to the Shake with the full knowledge that the top 5 will go out of state. They understand the value of students traveling and testing our skills in unknown venues. The first year we took only 2, our top 2 to Chicago. Still a good trip, but we wanted to dream bigger. We wanted to take more than 2, we wanted to go somewhere else. In the past 3 years, the top 5 have traveled to Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, and New York. Each time the destinations have been determined by the ability of the committee for us to connect to somebody to help us make rounds 5 and 6 successful. We've connected with Sherry Bustos, Ron Clark, and John Simpkins, to name a few. There may be a time in the future that the areas between Chicago and St. Louis could be considered. It is dependent on opportunities that the entity has to offer and the willingness of the people from that entity to open up their venue for the Shake. We don't want our kids to just have local dreams. We want them to see the whole world and know they can conquer it all. Part of diversity is seeing different places and experiencing them. We want our kids to have those opportunities. Are there any other questions? Comments?
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay. We have another presentation on the agenda. Board members were going to talk about their experience at the joint conference that we just, those that attended a couple of weeks ago. In lieu of time, how do board members feel about tabling that to next month?
It's all the public record. It's,
Right.
anyone can read it if they want.
Any questions if they have?
Okay. So for those of you who are interested in knowing what we learned at our conference, feel free to pull those notes up on the board website, and you can read about all of the different sessions that we attended in order to be more effective leaders and partners as school board members. Okay. Next item on the agenda, approval of the consent agenda. Do I have a
So
motion?
moved.
Second.
Any questions, concerns, or anything needing to be removed? Allison?
Glasnovich?
Yes.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Sherpy?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Hanks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Thank you.
Next, focus area 1, relevant skills that lead to employability. First on the agenda is the administrative report on curriculum. Mrs. Springer.
We've had a number of meetings. In fact, tonight we had a 7 through 12 public speaking rubric meeting where we talked about, I do it every time. I apologize. We had a meeting this evening that spoke, that we had an opportunity to speak about different opportunities within the community to reach out. So Mr. Benowitz and Ms. Ayton and I are also going to go, we have a meeting scheduled, we're going to go throughout the community and create some formal and informal opportunities for some public speaking opportunities. I also meet with the K-6, and you saw in my report, I have several meetings set up for the K-6 writing and public speaking rubrics, along with 7-12 writing rubrics. We're getting those fine-tuned, making great progress on those as well. We've scheduled the, like I said, the instructional coaching conference. We have, like I said earlier, we have 35 people signed up for that conference, so we have representatives from District 50 and so Peoria, United. I have people coming from all area, Washington, yep, and some other areas. So I feel like this will be a great opportunity for Galesburg to kind of connect with other school districts around and set up this instructional coaching ring, you know, to provide some professional development both ways.
Are there other schools in our area that are doing that already, or?
Yes, in fact, United is already doing that, and so they're actually going to join us as well. I'm trying to think who else in our local area. Roba, right? Roba has 1 or 2.
One, and then Abington and Avon is adding next year.
So it's nice to kind of gather the troops, so we have people to connect with, and, you know, I mean, you learn from each other's mistakes and successes and things like that. We're still continuing the Amplify Science pilot, and I believe that's it. Any questions for me?
Jackie, can you remind me when that conference is again?
Yes, January 7th to the 9th is the first of the 5 days, and then February 19th and 20th for the last 2 days. We also have building administrators kind of coming in over those 5 days so they can be part of the process as well.
Any other questions?
In your notes, you mentioned for next month, we're going to start a gifted and talented and accelerated committee.
Yes.
How do you envision that being structured?
So what I'm going to do is elicit some participation from some community members, parents, also any interested staff. We have our gifted, talented, accelerated policy, but we need to have a structured way to identify those students, and also some programming to offer those students, which we don't currently have in
We
place.
discussed that when we went over the policies that we, and the
So
policy.
that is the start of that work. I look at us looking at some research to understand what those things mean, because I don't know that everybody understands all of those three. And then be able to move in the direction that Galesburg wants to go so that we can best serve our students. We're also going to be working on some RTI, MTSS, multi-tiered support, just so that we can have a structured process through Galesburg. Some of our old materials talk about assessments we no longer use, so we need to get that corrected and addressed. So I'll be looking for some staff input on that. All right,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have our special ed report.
I'm Deb Craddy, the elementary special ed coordinator. Dawn is at her son's Christmas program tonight, so. The report was sent. Of course, the one thing that we're looking for is staff. Special ed staff is, few and far between across the state, just in regards to psychologists and teachers. And so that's always something that we're looking forward to, but we're working on a lot of different things. Like Tiffany talked about the MTSS, we're looking at, our RTI process and how we're getting kids from gen ed, getting assistance, and then getting into special ed. So if there's any questions or comments, but.
Any questions from board members? Thank you. Any questions regarding the building reports? Moving to the next item, focus area number 2, facilities that assist in skill acquisition. First on that, discussion about building study committees. Dr. Asplund.
Thank you. As I told you last month, I've been putting together some thoughts about, as we move forward with our building transition, putting together several committees to help get us input and try to smooth that process along. So I've put together just some thoughts that I will send to you all in a document, then would ask for feedback on that. Make sure you just send it to me and then I'll send it back so that we're not violating any Open Meeting Act requirements. But really looking at the initial thoughts to have are, we would have a K-4 transition committee, a 5-6 transition committee, and a 7-12 transition committee. But underneath those, we'd have to look at such issues such as curriculum, transportation, start time, staffing, and how the facility solutions would really address each of those. At 5 and 6 and 7-12, we also would want to look at schedule and start time. So, for instance, if we ever wanted to talk about changing when school started, this would be the ideal time, to do that. We're going to have to change some of that as well to look at how we do transportation. Looking at the 7-12 facility, how we can create a complementary schedule for the two buildings. Obviously, we're going to want a lot of staff on that. We're going to want parents on that. We're going to want students on that. We're going to want board members on that. So I will send this document to you, and then please give me back your thoughts, and then I will send out general comments to everybody so that we can try to move this forward so that next month we really start talking about establishing some committees so that we can then start getting membership on those, so that we can then start having those meetings scheduled, getting chair people, having reports back to the board, all that sort of thing, so that we can stay as transparent as humanly possible throughout this process. So, any questions on anything I just said?
So if we have community members who have indicated an interest in being on a committee, we should forward those names to you?
That would be wonderful, yes. If you have anybody that's interested, just forward those names to me, and I have a list so far of people that have indicated interest to me, but, don't assume they've told me, I can always just cross a name off. I've written it twice, so.
Anyone from our viewing audience, right?
Anybody from our viewing audience, if both of you out there would really like to take part, we would welcome your participation as well. Yeah, okay, you're going to chair 3 committees.
Any other questions from board members?
I'm glad it's happening.
Yes.
Next up, the enrollment report. Are there any questions about the enrollment report attached?
Is it new, or it's just I finally noticed it? We have a section there that talks about out-of-district placements.
That's been there.
No, it has, boy.
No, that is new.
Boy, that's new. You mean, the tab on the...
No, the bottom here.
Oh, that bottom box, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Yes, that is.
Good, so I didn't miss it in previous
No,
reports.
we just added it last month because we had kiddos that were unaccounted for when you add up the numbers. So we just wanted you to be able to see where our students are in other day treatment programs and residential.
Thank you.
And some of those, just so you know, they can be inaccurate after one day, just because some of those are very transient.
Yes.
But We tried to do it on the same day, so yeah, you have 2 months of that so far. But I can tell you, just from looking at that, that I believe that's already not entirely accurate.
You don't have to tell me that, it's okay.
That's
It's a snapshot, right.
All right, any other questions? Okay, next. Focus area 3, responding to the changing needs of our community. First on this part of the agenda is just a discussion, quick explanation about school cancellation procedure. Dr. Astley.
Thank you. So it was asked to me, how do we make the decision to call school off? And so I'm just going to go through it very briefly in light of the time we've had so far tonight. But essentially what it is we have, obviously I'm looking at the weather forecast well in advance. I get up at 4 o'clock every morning. We have a text exchange with about 9 different school districts, and we're all looking at how, what anybody decided to do. For instance, this morning, Monmouth Roseville was a 2-hour delay because of fog. If the weather, either by forecast or by my eyeballs, when I go outside at 4, if I see that it's questionable, I drive. And, I have really gotten to know the rural roads of District 205. Fortunately, I have a Subaru. I don't worry too much about getting stuck. But really spend most of my time on the rural roads, because in the city, you can typically get around. We do look at the sidewalks. But being a country kid, growing up, I'm particularly sensitive to that. So I go well into Warren County and go well out west, go all the way, from Henderson down all out west down to the south end, out by Bracken. And really drive a lot of those rural roads to see if it's indeed safe. Some of the things that I do, if there's any police officers listening, I don't drive a Subaru. But yeah, I slam my brakes on and see if we're skidding, and I'm nowhere near cars or anything like that. But, I really try to make sure that I do my due diligence. Obviously, if there's fog, there's different ways of looking about it. The guideline for temperature is 20 degrees below zero. On wind chill. Now, is that a hard and fast state law? No, there's no law about when you would call school off with temperature. The guideline is generally 20 degrees below zero wind chill. But that depends on road conditions and things of that sort. And then something else that is always a factor in consideration is the number of days in a row if we've called school off. So we know that there are students who get their meals at school. Okay, so we don't want to have too many days off in a row, but if we just don't think that it's safe to get outside and travel on a bus, or having a large group of people out there, we'll call school off, but that is a factor in the decision. But in general, it's mostly to do with road conditions and temperature. So, and the forecast. I'll be the first to say there was a day 5 years ago where the forecast said blizzard, but there was no blizzard, so I didn't call off school. It's obviously not here. I didn't call off school, and then at 7:30 the blizzard hit, and I really wished I'd called off school. So those are really done by feel as much as anything. But yeah, I'd say the vast majority of it is through my own driving, just to go out and see what's going on, because I don't trust anybody else's opinion. I guess that's really what I want to say. If somebody could tell me it's fine, whatever. I'm not gonna put my reputation on what somebody else tells me. So I drive the roads every day.
Do we not have policy for late starts?
We have late starts in the books, yes. And so
we have
those,
possibility.
and we've used them. We've used them. Last year, I believe we used them twice. It might have been 3. I know at least 2. This year I've considered it, but so far I haven't felt that we needed it. But we don't. Late starts create some other problems for people, childcare and things like that. So that's another consideration. But we used it last year once when we thought there was a snowstorm or an ice storm coming, but it hadn't come. So we did a 1-hour delayed or 2-hour delayed start in anticipation that maybe the ice storm would come, and then the forecast changed, and so I was like, forget it, we can go to school. And there was another one, I can't remember why. But anyway, so yeah, we do have late starts we put in the beginning of last year.
do we still have the procedure where we just will do transportation in town and not?
I think that's a really bad idea. So, yeah, that's within our possibility to do it, but I think, once again, I'm a country kid at heart, and I think that's, hey, city
They
kids,
should've walked to school.
we're gonna transport, we're gonna have school for the city kids, but if you live out in the country, well, you're just not gonna get an education today. I just don't think that's a great message. So if it's, we need to be equitable to everybody. So yeah, I know I will tell you, growing up, I've had this conversation with Tom Hawkins. I know growing up, Galesburg had a
Sitting in the back row.
had a practice of doing that, and I always remember as a kid going, well, I guess they don't care if country kids learn. I mean, I just thought that was odd, so,
Obviously, we know what happened.
No more kombucha.
What are you talking about? Well, yeah. Don't aim that at me. I just used your name. He insulted you. Any questions on that?
Thank you for the clarification.
I just want to make a comment. As a teacher, educator in the school district, I would often hear from people who weren't in the know, oh, you're missing school again, just another day off. And I kept saying, we go the same number of days, no matter what. It's either now or later, except an extreme year.
Right.
And there have been a couple of those along the way.
Yeah, I know one year at Farmington, we didn't go full, we had an act of God because it was just a terrible
Right,
winter.
and I think I remember one
I think that's the
time,
only time
but-
I've ever remembered doing that.
But we go the same number of days, folks, no matter what.
Yes, and that's an excellent point. Even though that if we have a snow day tomorrow, we're gonna make that up at the end of the year.
No, we don't have a snow day tomorrow.
How do you know? I'll let you know about 5:30.
Go ahead and call.
Any other questions?
Find my phone.
Okay. Item B, consider approval of the intergovernmental agreement with Delavar CTE system. Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
Question. Well, Dr. Aspen, you want to?
Yeah, this is something we have to do every year, being part of Delabar. Last year we did it in November, this year we do it in December just because of when we got the Articles of Agreement. Nothing's changed in those Articles of Agreement from last year.
Any questions from board members? Allison?
Lyon?
Yeah, yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sherby?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasovich?
Aye.
Next, consider approval of tax levy option A. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Ms. Ham?
Well, we've never done it exactly this way, so I'm not exactly sure how to proceed in terms of conversation between A and B, or if that's,
That would be the way for us to decide how to vote on A.
right. So,
Fire away.
is that okay to talk about B?
I think you can preview B. You have a motion and a second on the table. There's nothing that would stop you from discussing B. This will either pass or you'll have a motion and a second on B.
Okay, all right, I just want to make sure we're not doing anything out of order. Okay, so everyone should have a copy of a spreadsheet that I put together, and we have option A and we have option B. So option A is an increase in the levy from last year in terms of, it takes our tax rate to $4.95, which was voted on 2 years ago, although the aggregate levy last year ended up being $4.83. So in the second column, which says option A, it shows that this option would give us an anticipated extension of $21,833,347. That's an anticipated increase of basically $1.2 million. We are shifting money into bonds and interest to cover our new health, life, safety bonds that were voted on last month. And so we're looking at a bond payment increase for the 1920 school year of about 1.9 million. So in order to keep the tax rate at 495, which is where it was 2 years ago, we needed to reduce the levy in our building fund by 617,000, in working cash by 212,000, in health, life, safety by 212,000, and then in our Social Security and Medicare by approximately 11,000. So in terms of our aggregate levy, yes, we're increasing it by 1.2 million.
for the overall levy, but the aggregate actually ends up being $640,000 less. I had given you some other additional information regarding the potential for additional revenues and expenditures for next year. We're really not looking at any increase in revenues with the evidence-based model, with pre-K for all, pre-K expansion grant, Title I, Title II, or Title IV. So we really don't have any projected sources of new revenue for next year. There is a potential loss in Title II funding. That's kind of been on the table for a couple of years now. We did see a $50,000 decrease this year from the previous year. So Title II is kind of in peril from a federal standpoint. So we're unsure with that. So that's kind of our anticipated revenues for next year. In terms of expenditures, we have a very clear picture of what that's going to look like. So we're going to see across the board approximately 3% increase in salaries, which is an additional $878,000. 3% in benefits, which is an additional $148,000. Our contracted transportation services came in with our bid opening, and we'll be approving that next month at a 7.6% increase just for next year. So unfortunately, we were hoping better pricing, and that did not happen. So at minimum, we're looking at another $143,000 in transportation costs. With all other items, we're looking at a CPI of about 2.5%. So just on our other contractual service and other items, we're looking at an increase of about $197,000. So next year, we're expecting that our expenses are gonna go up about $1.3 million with no other revenue other than to capture the EAV from the tax levy. So that's,
And our transportation reimbursement will go up.
yes, correct. And then option B is, I think. Just a second, Ms. Hammond, did you Yes. say it's gonna increase 1.3? Right, our expenses will increase. I have projected $1,368,176. Thank you. Option,
I have a question. And the 3% increase, that's for which folks then?
so that's across the board. We still are gonna be negotiating 2 collective bargaining agreements. So I factored in what our increase will be for the 1 collective bargaining agreement we have for next year, and
So
factored
the
that
other
in
one
across the board.
is, we don't know yet?
We don't know yet.
So you didn't, it's not figured in there yet?
It is figured in there, but I figured it at 3%. So,
And the 3% benefit increase, how is that arrived upon?
well, that's based on the 3% increase in salaries.
So which, but,
So that's IMRF, Social Security, Medicare.
so how about things like health insurance? You're assuming that is static?
We have not seen an increase, so I did not factor in an increase in health insurance.
Okay.
And so levy option B is taking basically the extension of last year, which was $20,566,337. And what would that look like if we levied that exact dollar amount? The only thing that we added to this, you'll see that it is $180,408 more than last year. That's because we had approximately $4.1 million of new property that came online for Knox County.
Well, and I want to be real clear, so last month, it was asked that we have one that's flat, showing last year's, and one that was basically option A. And I asked Mrs. Ham to include the new property, because if the desire was for people to keep the same tax bill from the school, you can get another $180,000 in levy, in extension, by including new property from people that didn't pay those taxes last year. So that's why that was a little bit altered from what you requested of us.
But the tax rate remained 483, which is what it was last year. So you can see that, we're looking at about $1.7 million less in all of the funds collectively. Education, 262,000 less than the previous year, 1 million in the building fund, 212 in working cash, 212,000 in health, life, safety, and 11,000 in Social Security and Medicare. Because once again, we needed to account for the bond and interest payment that will increase by 1.9 million. So, are there any questions?
speak. So essentially, we need to choose a lane tonight, because by the last Tuesday of December, we have to file a levy. And so, option A increases the levy from last year. Option B increases it, but only accounting for new property, so an existing homeowner would see an increase. Unless they added on a story to their house or something. I mean, you know, that-
But option A wouldn't necessarily, it would be an increase from last year, but not from the previous year. And-
Correct.
Right.
It would be an increase from last year, but not the year before that.
I know, Mr. Steve.
I won't argue, but I disagree with that statement. Your bill is still gonna be higher.
Yes, you do. Yeah, but looking at it from the school, and we can't control, you know, if houses are getting, if property's getting reassessed every 3 years, we can't control that cycle. We can't control, you know, what the assessment is doing.
Right.
And our intention was to levy at 495 last year, but the EAV ended up coming in higher, which adjusted it down to 483.
Yeah. So there was a 12-cent decrease last year.
So this means that $1.7 million less coming to us would be less money in our reserves, correct?
Correct, and we have not met our goal in the Ed Fund Reserve.
And where are you projecting us to be at the end of this year for the reserves?
So, when I presented a couple months ago, we're looking at being at 73% of our target, I believe, was the number. We've already met our targets in building and transportation funds. My only concern is that target in building is going to decrease, so we're not going to be at 100% because we are levying significantly less with either option. So we are going to have to use reserves in FY '20, in the building fund to some degree. That was the trade-off, so that we didn't increase the tax rate above 495. But we do have reserves available.
Right, well,
Yeah.
and to make sure we tell the whole story here too, so, we have this obvious 3 or 4 year transition as we go through the building project. But over time, the theory is we won't need as much in some of those because we'll experience some operational savings and we won't have some other buildings. So, you know, it's just a degree to which we want to live with some ambiguity in the next 3 to 4 years. I mean, that's really what we're talking about.
Would this impact potentially impact our bond rating? Considering we're about to borrow a lot of money.
Would this impact our bond rating? Well, we haven't had the bond call yet, so.
Yeah, we did.
Well, we had one call.
S&P,
Yeah.
that was last week.
We had the one call, and that's the only one we're gonna have?
That's the only one we're having.
Okay, I thought there was gonna be another one. I apologize. Yeah, we did have the S&P one. And we gave them which numbers on that one?
I told them that we were gonna do 2 options. So they were really looking at last year's data and then also the audit. So they're really not looking at this. This is just a general
Right,
question.
so no, it won't.
Now, in the future, if we sell any additional,
Yeah,
this could impact
down the
it.
road it could, but for this bond sale, it should not.
Any other questions or comments from board members?
I guess I do. If we levy in less funds, it will not negatively affect any programs, it would just negatively affect our reserves. Is that fair to say that?
That's fair.
There's a potential that could be deficit spending in certain, we still have reserves, but technically we're still deficit spending.
Right, the red.
Correct.
Got the red.
And that will negatively impact our financial rating score, which is a factor in bond rating.
But.
Because we haven't met that one reserve goal, is that correct?
Well, so on the audit, there's a financial rating score that we receive, and so that's part of one of many, many, many factors. So, I don't want you to. We're saving money on the, but as our, with deficit spending and days on cash, which will be reduced, that would potentially have some sort of small impact.
But it won't affect us, because we're gonna borrow as much as we can borrow later today, right?
Well, later, we've already borrowed that money.
Yeah, so-
Well, so, our financial score from the state of Illinois well, first of all, it is going to be negatively impacted, it's in full transparency, it's gonna be negatively impacted by the amount of debt we have. I mean, that's part of the score. And then the rest of it's days cash on hand and fund balance to revenue ratio. So those could be impacted down the road, sure. But we're already gonna have somewhat of a hit just because of the amount of debt we're taking on.
And I think, isn't that worth 10% of your score, your bonds and your bond
Yeah, that's
interest?
the lowest.
That's the lowest factor in your score.
Yeah, the bigger ones are days cash on hand and fund balance to revenue ratio, which is really basically the same thing. but Somehow they count it twice.
Other questions? Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to consider the approval of tax levy option A. Are we ready to vote?
I just realized I'll be the seventh person on this one, it's a good place to be.
Who moved and who seconded?
Amy moved and Jeannie and seconded.
Yeah, I'm just not saying anything because I think the last meeting, I expressed my opinions.
Yes, you did.
Okay. Allison?
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sherpy?
Aye.
Statham?
No.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glastovich?
Aye.
Lyon?
Nay.
And you can go ahead and scrap D.
Great.
Can I make a motion to approve it?
Go ahead.
We render it moot.
Sorry, member state.
I know.
Okay, given that tax levy option A was approved, we do not need to consider tax levy option B, so we'll move on to consider approval of the resolution to abate series 2011B and 2014B alternate revenue bonds.
So moved.
Oh, yes, thank you. Whitten moved. Second?
Second.
Ms. Ham?
This is an abatement we do every year for our 1 cent sales tax bonds, so we have to abate it, otherwise, the county clerk will automatically levy for these, so we have to show an abatement for that. This is just a procedural thing that we do every year, so it says that they'll take the money from our proceeds of 1 cent sales tax versus from the taxpayers.
I'm glad we're approving this.
Any other questions or comments? Allison?
Sherpy?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glastovich?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to the next item on our agenda, personnel. First up, consider approval of job descriptions. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Dr. Esplin?
Thank you. You have before you, I'm not looking at it in front of me. I know we have the nurse, we
Nurse,
have the
sign language
interpreter, and there's a third one.
Special ed director.
Special ed director. These are all provision, trying to, once again, go through everybody's work duties and actually reflect what they do. And so we feel good about these. We will have a bunch. The reason I was not sure, we have like, how many more are there, Allison? Like 6 or 7?
I think there's at least 4.
Yeah, there's several more that we'll put on for next month. So we're continuing this, so these are the latest ones. We'll have some more next month for you, assuming these are okay.
Any questions or comments from board members?
We have current, I know we have a special ed director. Are the two other positions, LPNs and away from classrooms?
Yes.
Do we currently have a sign language
We
interpreter?
do, we do.
How does this affect their current work? Are we changing into
No,
something?
so, yeah, essentially, how this works, and we're not, I don't want the sign language interpreter, or anything. This is not about any specific person, okay? So whoever's listening at home, this isn't about anybody. So it's appropriate to go through and look at job descriptions, because when you're evaluating somebody, it should be based on their job description, okay? So when somebody's getting, provided feedback, it should be reflected on their actual job. So every, couple of years, you should really be looking at somebody's actual job, because it could have changed because of a lot of different circumstances. So that you actually are providing legally standbyable, that's not even a word, but it's late, data. It needs to actually reflect their job. So, I'm looking at Carrie there. So if Carrie Cooper, who is doing a fantastic job, by the way, so she doesn't have to worry about anything, but, she's teaching at the high school. Well, if all of a sudden the state law changed, and all of a sudden, instead of us stopping at 22, it went to 25-year-olds, her job description would have to change because of the people that she educates. So it's things like that. When there's law changes, when there's circumstantial changes, we change what that job description looks like. And since we've added the LPNs, obviously we need to change secretary job descriptions, because some of their old tasks have been assigned to other people. So it's looking at all of those different things as we go forward to make sure that we're actually keeping those job descriptions current, so that those are married to their evaluations and they're really substantiated.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments regarding these? The only thing that I would ask in the future, like, so when the next round comes up, if you could highlight
Highlight the changes.
the changes.
Yeah, yes,
Because otherwise, we're going back and forth.
correct.
And that would be wonderful.
Would you rather, you want strike-throughs? You want to just do it that way, red letters?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay, that's how I would look at it. We will make it so.
Thank you. Okay. There's no other questions or comments? Allison?
Statham?
Aye.
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasovich?
Aye.
Lyon?
Yes.
Pickrell? Aye. Sharpie?
Aye.
Next, consider approval of the personnel report. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Questions?
I have one other thing, I'm sorry, since I don't really have a specific list. On your table in front of you, I promised you last month I would come back with a salary look at the proposed communication specialist. As you can see, most of these folks are coming from suburbs, and they're making way more than what we intend to pay. But if you look at Rock Island, that's more in line with what I would be recommending that salary be for a 12-month position. So this is just food for thought. We'll be coming back with that at a later time, so we can ask the post. But I just wanted to make sure you had that data and you knew what it meant.
All right, if there's nothing else. Allison?
Banks?
Aye.
Cervantes?
Aye.
Glasovich? Aye. Lyon?
No.
Pickrell?
Aye.
Sharpie?
Aye.
Statham?
Aye.
Next on the agenda, grievance update, Dr. Asplin.
I believe I can happily report that all current grievances have been resolved amicably and positively, and I thank the union for working with us on those things. So at this time, we are in good shape.
Great. Wonderful. All right. On to some people's favorite part of the meeting. For some other people, it's only the second favorite part of the meeting. Comments,
the end,
comments by members of the board. Member Glasnovich.
I just wish everybody a happy and healthy holiday season, however you celebrate, and hope it's with family and friends. That's it.
Member Sharpie.
That's very nice. I'd also like to thank the presenters tonight for the
presentation on instructional coaching. That was very informative. And also the presentation on the Great Galesburg Shake. I enjoyed that presentation as well. I'd also like to thank Ms. Baker for the work she done to get Elizabeth Eckford from Little Rock 9 and get her to speak today at Lombard Junior High. That was a really good presentation. I think a good thing for all our junior high students. I also stopped by the high school today and went to the 21st Century After School program. And I was really impressed with the work that they were doing there too. I kind of knew that was going on, but didn't actually, never seen it. And I was told that they actually had a low attendance today, and there had to be at least 40 or more students engaged in a variety of activities. So they're doing good work there. And hopefully no more snow days.
I hope the same.
Member Thurgood.
Well, I have to backtrack because last month's meeting was, we had a lot going on that we were voting on, and I neglected to thank Mr. Young for the community day at Lombard that was held. I got to sneak over there on my lunch break, and your students were very pleasant to have as tour guides and taking the community through the building. So I hope that you got some good feedback from community members as well. So thank you for opening up Lombard for anyone to come that day. I appreciate it. Also, thank you to Nielsen for the family reading night. That was a lot of fun to attend, and like I mentioned to someone, it's fun to get out of Steele every once in a while, so I appreciate the invite to come and be a part of that. And thank you, Allison Boone, for sharing, probably on behalf of Dr. Asplin, all the holiday concerts that are coming up and that are going on right now. Obviously, we can attend the one tonight, but hopefully we can get to one of those. So thank you for sharing that. And I believe they came from the students at Gale, but we received letters today. So I appreciate those students taking the effort to send us some holiday greetings.
Member Banks.
Ditto on all the thanks, but I also want to encourage everybody, the people in the audience probably know, but anybody who watches this video, to go on and look at the school reports. There is so much good going on in those schools, and it's so neat to read all of the things they're doing. I think they all have kindness programs going on, collecting food drives, the musical programs, the girls bowling team won their invitational. We had a young gentleman, Zach Cantwell, earned his Eagle Scout designation and badge. And Coach Evan Massey and his monumental feat. There's so much good going on, and we hear so much negativity today. Just go in and look at those building reports, and you see just what all is going on. It's really terrific.
Member State?
No comments.
Member Lyon?
Well, I've taken a few minutes the last few weeks to visit some of the schools because I want people to know that how serious we're taking this rebuilding of the schools, and I want them to look at it that way. And I hope anyone who's of interest to get any of these committees to do it, let it be parents, staff, because there's no redos on this project. We need to get it right. And we need to hear everyone's opinion the first time through, because there's going to be no second time. So I just beg people, if they have an opinion, to please share it. Excuse me,
I know.
I just want to thank everyone who did provide feedback during the last few months in regards to the building study. I've still continued to hear from people, and whether they agree or not, they thank the board for the work that we've done and the conversations that we've held at this table and the way that we have attempted to bring the community into the conversation. And I appreciate hearing that because I do feel that this board did its best to make sure that the community had opportunities and that we heard from them And even if everybody doesn't feel as if they were responded to, I hope that the community knows that they were heard, and we're gonna continue to listen. And we do want their participation as we move forward with the impending changes to our school district. And have a great, last 2 weeks of school before break? I had the 9 days. Working at Knox, it's weird because we've been out since before Thanksgiving. So I don't have students on campus, but the work has still continued. So I'm losing track of time. So thank you very much. And our next board meeting, if there's no future agenda items from board members, our next meeting is scheduled for Monday, January 14th, 7 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Oh, yeah.
Opposed?
9:16.
You too. I sit over there by the cool breeze at the door.